Hello, everyone. My name is Magdalena Abrego, and I'm an assistant director with Berklee's Office of Alumni Affairs. And I'm also an alumna of the college, class 2015. I'm a guitar player. So thanks again for joining us tonight. I'm super excited to be joined by Dustin Gee from the Career Center to talk about cold outreach, which is a topic that grows in relevance by the day as more and more of our communication moves to a digital forum. So before we start, I just wanted to point out that you can view previous webinars online at youtube.com/Berklee alumni. And to learn more about upcoming webinars, I encourage you all to follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Berklee Alumni, and also check out our newsletter, which includes a comprehensive guide to all of our events. And if you don't receive that newsletter currently and would like to, you can write to us at alumniaffairs@berklee.edu. And we'll make sure to update your contact information. With that, I'm going to hand things off to Dustin Gee, who is our Director of Employer Engagement and Career Programs at Berklee's Career Center. Hey, Dustin.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everyone. It's such a pleasure to have an opportunity to speak directly to all of you who are now alums out there in various industry hubs throughout the U.S. and possibly even the world, joining us for tonight's workshop. So when Callan and Magdalena approached me about wanting to do this, there were sort of a few things that came to mind. One, the timeliness of this topic. Cold outreach is something that we've been doing for quite some time, but in the world of COVID, amidst a global pandemic, among the shakeup that's happening right now in the music industry as people pivot and think about how their networks can continue to grow, it's super timely. So I wanted to really make sure that what we cover tonight is going to be done so in a compact sort of period of time. The Career Center as a whole has changed so much in so many good ways to really put students and alumni at the front and center of everything that we do, whether that's programs, whether that's on-campus events, whether that's joining Magdalena and Callan and other alumni professionals out on the road to meet with you all. And learn about your needs and learn about your experience and ways that can be paid forward on campus with current students. So we're moving towards wanting to really develop more boot camp style sessions where we're able to present a topic and really get through that topic in a short period of time and get to Q&A and get to questions. So I'm excited to be able to sort of take the reins on cold outreach and share with you some best practices to build professional relationships as we think about the current times we find ourselves in. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. So I wanted to begin just by laying a foundation behind what is it we're talking about when we say cold outreach. All of us may interpret and think about it in a different context. For those of us who have maybe worked in sales or those of us that work on the front lines of customer service, cold outreach has a very specific purpose, right? And that's to deliver a pitch to a customer or potential client, reel them in and have them commit to wanting to take advantage of a specific service. So that's kind of where cold outreach comes from. And it's evolved to really apply to our own sort of professional networks and thinking about cold outreach as a method that we can use to grow our network, and recognizing that we're in times where we don't have the chance to meet up with folks, to catch up over drinks, to meet at networking mixers, alumni sponsored events, professional associations and conferences. So many things have gone virtual, are going to continue to be virtual. And so cold outreach is a practice we can really borrow from the business and sales world and apply it to continuing to be able to expand our network, connect with one another where we have common ground. Certainly thinking about the Berklee network as sort of your first go-to place for building and expanding relationships. So cold outreach, the sort of definition that I use, is it's a message sent to an individual or group that has had no prior relationship with you. In its most simplest form, it really is just that. It's a message that we're going to be crafting with the intention of reaching out to someone who has maybe had no prior interaction or connection with you. And there's a lot of baggage that can come with that. And we'll get through and unpack what some of that is and some of the ways you can best navigate that. And so one of the reasons why I think cold outreach is really imperative is for the benefits it can provide in our current times, specifically around seeking mentorship and expert advice or advice from individuals who you maybe look up to in the industry or have recently stumbled upon or learned about, and feel as though there could be some form of mutual benefit through you two having an engaging conversation. There are many ways cold outreach can help you expand your reach and grow. And I like to sort of preface this session with just sort of saying your network is arguably really your most important asset. And I think most of us are finding that to be particularly true given the current times that we find ourselves in. Cold outreach, I want to acknowledge, can certainly be intimidating. It can be overwhelming, not to mention exhausting. And so we'll definitely spend some time today talking about quality over quantity. I think quality, tailored, personalized outreach is going to get you way further with folks who have never heard of you or maybe a total stranger, versus developing a message that you can just shoot off through LinkedIn or dig up a bunch of emails and be able to mass message 50 contacts at one time. So it does regardless require putting in a lot of effort, and you never really know what type of response you're going to get. And so there is a sense of vulnerability that comes with engaging in cold outreach. What if you get a negative email back? What if they never respond? How do you follow up? There's so much we have to kind of unpack and get through, and much of our session is going to focus on that. Building a network via email outreach requires balancing personalization with volume. So I really want to encourage us to sort of keep that front of mind, as I've already started to mention. Yeah, so with that, let's move on to our next slide. So I kind of want to break this down into a few subcomponents. We're going to start with getting started, some things to think about before you start drafting messages and doing outreach. And then we'll move into some specific tips and things to think about. And I'm going to be sharing some examples with you about what this type of outreach might actually look like. Everything is going to be situational, so there can be a lot of different one-offs. But I hope that what I share out this evening in regards to examples and tips, you can take and sort of apply it to your own specific purposes in your own specific outreach, whether that be in person, whether that be online through email or other social media platforms. So getting started. As you think about cold outreach, it's really important to initiate sort of a process and a plan by strategizing around who is it you are looking to make contact with. So really building out a list. And this list is going to be ever evolving and ever growing as you meet with people. They may make referrals. Hey, I think you should really connect with this individual. They could provide some good insight, or they may have a lead on a really great gig or a job opportunity. But beginning by really establishing an initial list of, I like to say, 10 contacts that you can prioritize reaching out to over the course of a 1 to 2 month period is really realistic. One of the ways I find both current students and alumni get overwhelmed is we think we have to do all this extensive outreach in one setting, and that's not really how effective cold outreach works. It's about finding a specific individual or a group, making an initiative and a plan to be in touch with that person and being very intentional and strategic with your communication. And from there, sticking with it and being consistent with continuously identifying a individual. And in my current role, where I work and largely oversee employer relations, connecting with industry and trying to keep a pulse on who's hiring, who has new roles, new companies that are growing in popularity and maybe of interest to alumni and students as it relates to contract work, freelance. My weekly goal is one new contact. So once a week, I have a big bucket list of individuals that I would love to be able to reach out to all in one week, but that seldom happens given all the other things that end up falling on my plate, and I'm sure you all can relate to that. So I make a commitment to reaching out to one new employer a week, and engaging in that conversation. That's how I start my week, and by the end of the week, I typically we'll have a response, or we'll have a plan put in place to be able to do proper follow-up based on the response that I may or may not have received. So as you're thinking about building that list, there's a few things that I would share with you to consider. Have you identified individuals whom you'd like to connect with? So you may already have a list of individuals. For some of you, you may not. And so that's utilizing different platforms that can help you pinpoint who it is that may be of interest that you want to add to your sphere in 7 degree of separation for contacts. Narrow down your intentions and purpose. So what are you looking to accomplish? With any individual contact or with the group or list of contacts you're seeking to identify. Is the goal to land a job? Is the goal to just simply build your network and get your name out there and meet with others? Or is it to seek out career advice? So get clear on your intention and purpose. What is it from what stance and position are you approaching cold outreach from? It's okay to have multiple purposes and intentions, so long that the messages in your plan really do sort of stick with that as a major focal point. Are you seeking connections that can add value to your business? This sort of ties back into where cold outreach originates from, to sales and business. If the idea is, you want to do cold outreach because you're a songwriter and you're looking to connect with producers who can support you in engineering and mixing, then it's certainly leading with that. So for some of you, I recognize it may be that cold outreach is really more of a business tactic. It's a way to draw in new clients, new business, see what needs are for individuals working in the industry, and that's a totally appropriate reason. But the way in which you approach it is going to take a slightly different stance than it is if you're reaching out to someone because you want to learn about their career path, or you want to be able to connect with them because they work at a company that you're really interested in and they have a job opening. All right, so getting started, we've covered that. So some things to keep in mind. I have 4 tips that I want to share with you. One is tools to build your network. So going back to how do you generate this list? If you don't already have folks that are coming to mind, like how can you do research and what resources are available to you to be able to help build out that list? There's a variety of tools that I'm going to share with you. I think the 2 most important ones and probably most informative and resourceful are going to be LinkedIn and Berklee Connect. If you're not familiar with Berklee Connect, it's a new student and alumni directory that the Alumni Affairs Office, along with a number of offices across the college and conservatory, have worked on launching, and it's a way for alumni and current students to be able to connect with one another. You can kind of think about it as like a private personal LinkedIn, but specifically for the Berklee community. All of you have existing accounts on there. We encourage you to get on that platform, update your profile, provide an updated contact and email address. It's important that in addition to thinking about using these platforms to identify people you want to reach out to, it's also important to make sure your profile is up to speed, that your profile really does represent you and your needs and your interest now at this moment in time. So that as individuals are doing the same as you, they're stumbling across you, they understand sort of your areas of expertise, your background, and it just helps facilitate stronger connections and get your information out there. So complete your profiles on both LinkedIn and Berklee Connect. The Career Center offers a really wonderful boot camp on how to develop a strong LinkedIn profile. So spend some time exploring those and certainly use those as a way to start to build out your network. One of the things I specifically like most, and actually I think that's goes to my next tip, is as you're identifying individuals, it often becomes the case where you find somebody you're really interested in, but you have no real way of knowing how you get in touch with them. It might be that you don't know their email address, or there's not a telephone number. I think for most cold outreach, I really recommend email as a starting point before you just cold call someone. And there's a really great tool that Google has called Name to Email. So if you've identified somebody that maybe works at Warner Music Group, you're not familiar with their email address. Name to Email literally allows you to type in their first and last name and then specify the company they work at, and they will provide you with the actual email template that employees of that company have. So it's a really great way for being able to pinpoint email addresses for individuals. It's not going to work for everything, but it's certainly a useful tool that I've personally used, and I've directed a lot of students and alumni to you, and it has allowed us to find the right email address for a contact and supported us in getting in touch with them. Tip 3, make sure your timing's right. As you're planning through this and you've developed and identified people that you want to be in touch with, it's important to think about when you should really be reaching out. And there's a lot of different factors that can come into play, right? If it's Grammy season, to me, that's not the time to be reaching out to an A&R at a major label, right? Like they're extremely busy at that point in time. If it's an artist that you know is about to launch a new EP or release a new song, probably not the most ideal time to be reaching out. So make sure your timing is right. Don't send cold emails. In most instances, I recommend not sending them on a Friday. Avoid holidays, specifically holidays in or around holidays. I always think about winter, the winter holidays that come up. There's time where people are offline. There's time where people are working. So, there's stretches of time when it may not be ideal. So experiment with different timing options as you reach out to individuals and sort of keep note of what you find works best. I personally like sending cold outreach messages between 7:30 and 9 a.m. in the morning, because my thought process is when they're logging into their work email, I'll be within hopefully the first 10 messages that maybe have come in since, the night before. So I'm right there, and I'm not buried if I'm sending it in the middle of the day and they haven't had a chance to get through their email. Tip 4, reach out via the right platform. So as you're identifying individuals, it's important to look at, well, where do they have a presence? If you're adding somebody or connecting with somebody on LinkedIn, wonderful. Do you find that person on a regular basis is posting articles, sharing updates, posting job opportunities? If they're posting regularly and engaging regularly, then it means LinkedIn might be the best place to message them through versus sending an individual email. There's certainly other platforms you can consider, Facebook Messenger, Instagram. Again, those tend to be more social and maybe personal, but I know a lot of individuals also have professional accounts on those platforms. I know personally, in reaching out to songwriters, especially those that are working at publishers, I found reaching out through social media, reaching out specifically through Instagram has been a really great way to get a response back from them versus me reaching out and asking for an email or using Name to Email to try to figure out what possible email address may be valid for them. So think about the right platform. And if you know somebody's really active on a specific platform, utilize the instant messaging features or messaging features and tools to be in touch with them there directly. All right. So now let's move on to, we've established our list. We've established who it is we might like to reach out to. We've considered a number of different things that might help us inform how we reach out, when we reach out. So we've identified that now's the right time. So, we're going to start to draft that initial email. And before we even get to that email, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the subject line. And I can't emphasize enough that with cold outreach, short and clear subject lines are really what's going to work best for you. there's a variety of research out there that does studies on email campaigns and what consumers and individuals respond to, what they click on, what they spend time reading. And so I thought some of these statistics and trends might actually be interesting. This is a study that's actually done by Invest. And they've learned that about 69% of email recipients report email as spam solely based on the subject line. So over 70% of people that participated in this survey, and we think about making a generalization to the broader public, we can assume that maybe that's even higher, maybe it's less. But around 70% of people, just from simply reading an email subject line, decide to not click on it because they think it's spam. So our first sort of instinct is to think about, how do I create a subject line that doesn't read as spamish? 47% of email recipients open email based on the subject line alone. That's important to keep in mind. 18.7% decrease in open rates when the word newsletter is used in subject lines. So as I think about individuals sharing out portfolios, sharing out new music, that maybe they're releasing and sending to a contact list, avoiding sort of newsletters and things along those lines for cold outreach specifically is something to consider. 8% of emails with no subject line altogether were opened 8% more than those with a subject line. So no subject line may actually get them to open your email versus including one. So lots of things to consider as you think about this specific person and what you think they might be most likely to respond to. So I want to provide some specific examples that I think are fun, that are short and clear, that can be helpful to you as you think about this specific message. So here are about 5 or 6 different examples. I've worked with students to kind of craft and with alumni to craft these, and these tend to be the ones that I find are most effective based on different circumstances. So a first example is, looking for advice from a music business or a sync and licensing expert, right? Something specific, it seems personal to them. You're pointing out something that person is most likely to associate with and identify with. Fellow Berklee alum who would love to connect, right? Establishing that you already have some common ground. You're a Berklee alum. Alumni networks are super powerful, and most individuals that are a part of an institution have an affinity for the institution that they attended. And so, there may be more of an impetus on their end to want to open your email and read it, knowing that you share a Berklee or maybe college or conservatory connection. Another popular one is, I was recently talking with a friend and they recommended I be in touch with this specific person who might be able to help me, or we might have some type of mutual, benefit we can provide to each other. So, Callan Moody said I should get in touch with you, indicating that person's name. Again, somebody that's familiar to them, that they know, that is going to provide some form of accuracy and validity to your message and outreach. Another great one is, we met at the LA Alumni Brunch in Los Angeles. Date, time specific, something that's going to be relatively, easy for them to pull from their memory. They may not remember you directly, but the title and the subject line is going to speak to them, and if something that they're more likely to click on. Finally, maybe it's something where you see that somebody got promoted, and you're really excited to learn more about their role, whatever the case may be. Something as simple as congrats on the promotion, so-and-so. So just a few examples. I hope that these are helpful, kind of gives you some more concrete tactical ways to think about how you actually shape and mold and write a subject line that is really going to have an impact and direct the person to want to open and read your message. All right, so now let's get into crafting your actual outreach message. So there's a few things I want you to consider, and then I'm going to show you an actual example of what I think an effective cold outreach message should and can look like. So first and foremost, I've already sort of reiterated this, but just to kind of really drive the point home, personalized intro for each contact, really is how you want to be approaching this. Again, templated sort of generic messages just are not probably going to get you the result you want as you're reaching out for folks. So personalization is the cornerstone to effective cold outreach. So whatever you can do to personalize a message, and I'll show you as we go through and look at the example and some of the other points, different ways you can actually personalize your outreach. Keep it short. This is, we're really thinking about a sprint, not a marathon. I suggest no more than 4 paragraphs. And in those 4 paragraphs, you're doing a lot in a very short, concise period of time. So explain how you found them, why they caught your interest, and what you'd like to discuss with them. I think it's really important that you don't overload them with too much information. There's a variety of ways you can shape this content. Sometimes I have individuals that bring in drafts of outreach messages, and they've included their whole artist biography. They've included, they're attaching their resume. They're including links to LinkedIn page and to their professional portfolios. And all of that is great. And there may be a time and place where you're able to really get that out in front of that individual and have them review it. But when you're first reaching out to someone, it's just too much. It's too much information. And so if they view this as, ooh, this is going to be a lot of work right from the get-go, they're probably less likely to want to engage with you and see where there can be a little bit of reciprocity in the communication exchange. Be specific. It's really important that you don't be wishy-washy. Ask for what you want. With that said, I know that a lot of individuals think about cold outreach when it comes to a job that they've seen. So maybe you've seen a job on Berklee Career Manager, or maybe there's a job that was posted on one of the alumni private Facebook groups. It can be a little off-putting when you're first reaching out to someone and you're specifically speaking about a job. Sometimes depending on the context and if somebody's referred you to that person, it could be appropriate and better suited to go right in and really ask. But in most instances, we're assuming that this person is a total stranger. And so if you're a total stranger reaching out to somebody who has no context for your background, your experience, doesn't know your street cred, asking them for a referral to an internal colleague probably isn't going to be something they're most comfortable with. So really put the initial focus on something besides that, and something that really indicates, hey, I have an interest in getting to know you, not this one-off transactional exchange of, can you pass on my resume, or hey, can I have 10 minutes of your time to talk specifically about this job. Again, that won't always be the case, but in most instances, in how I'm thinking about our session today, that wouldn't be the approach that I would advise if that's the situation you find yourself in. Spell out what's in it for them. So why would this person want to meet with you? Why would they want to take 15 minutes out of their busy day to have a Google Hangout or a Zoom or a Facebook video conversation with you? So really think through sort of what is in it for them. Sometimes it can be enough just to have the Berklee connection, from one Berklee community member to another. That really can carry a lot of power and weight. When you don't, and you're reaching out to somebody who isn't a part of our community, you really do got to kind of think through that. It could be that you want to sing their praises. Hey, I saw that you recently released this song and now it's charting and doing really well on streaming. Simply putting something in their court that's positive, that allows them and sort of excites them about what they can gain from an interaction in communication with you. Finally, I've one more, but be appreciative. I've read a lot of messages in my day where individuals are just being really specific and really direct, but not really showing any form of sort of respect and common courtesy, or maybe showing like a really big ego, based on how they're writing, their writing tone, or maybe simply just highlighting a bunch of accolades, thinking that's going to impress someone. So, just kind of be mindful of the tone of your writing. Make sure it's coming across as respectful. Make sure it's coming across as you're being, you're extremely grateful for the fact that they're even taking 5 minutes to read your outreach message. Just really demonstrate that common courtesy. And finally, close with a question. So I always recommend, with any form of cold outreach, to suggest a 15-minute call to begin with. If they respond and say, hey, you know what, no, let's take on, happy to chat for 30 minutes, then that's fine. Let them make that. But initially, to make it not seem like a heavy lift, I recommend no more than 15 minutes. If you're going to suggest a time, maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to say, hey, would really enjoy setting up a time to connect with you by phone. Or asking to meet in person if we get to a place where that's going to be something folks feel more safe and comfortable doing. So all really good points to kind of think about as you're crafting this outreach message. So let me give you an example of sort of, given all the best practices and some of the tips that I've shared, what does this all look like when it comes down to a finalized message? So this is a message I've actually recently worked with a student on crafting as they were seeking to reach out to an alum of ours that's working at Spotify. So I'll read you through this, and I think you'll easily be able to pick up on some of the many tips and tactics I've been discussing so far. So, dear Zach, my name's Samantha, and I'm a Berklee graduate, which I saw you graduated from as well. I'm reaching out because I noticed from my research on LinkedIn that you work at Spotify, and your career journey is inspiring. I'm impressed by how quickly you've been able to land amazing jobs at Warner Music Group and Spotify. It'd be great to learn more about your experience in music business and the qualities you feel have helped you become successful since graduating from Berklee. I'd especially love to hear about what it was like starting out as a recent grad and finding your way in the industry. I'm flexible, and even just 15 minutes of your time would be invaluable and appreciated. Would it be possible for us to find a time to chat? So going back just one slide, basically every one of these points is touched on in the message, right? It's specific. We're not beating around the bush. We're direct. We're providing sort of some content here that indicates, why this person may have an interest. You're looking at them as maybe a role model, as somebody that has expertise in an area that you would really love to be able to tap into. And so, you're showing them that they have a lot of worth and value in doing it in what I think is, a professional, courteous way. So I hope that the example is helpful to sort of bring all of this full circle. So you send the message, and now you're waiting, right? And before I go into they've replied, assuming that they do reply, there's a lot that goes into, well, how long should I wait? I send an email on Monday. Do I give it 2 weeks for them to respond? I think follow-up is really important. And my rule of thumb is 7 to 10 days. If you send a message and in 7 to 10 days you haven't gotten a response back, send a little follow-up. You don't need to just, click forward on the message that you already sent. I would actually just send something that piggybacks off that message, something simple as, hey, Zach, just following up. I had sent a message, a few weeks ago. Really excited to connect. Please let me know if you would have, a few minutes. Something simple as that can just trigger. Again, we all get busy and things can slip through the cracks. Maybe they saw your message, intended to reply, but forgot about it. So send one follow-up. And if you fail to get a response from that, you may want to think about other creative ways versus just email communication for getting in touch with them. But hopefully they respond. And when they do respond, you then got to ask yourself, well, now what, right? So they've responded, they've acknowledged my letter, they're interested in meeting me. I really recommend in that second message, again, not going overboard and not providing too much information. This isn't an opportunity to, here's my resume, here's my professional website, here's my full work history. Keep it short and really just focus on the logistics at hand for scheduling your face-to-face meeting or your virtual conversation. So, a good example for this that Samantha and I used was, hey, Zach, it's great to hear from you. I'd love to meet next week. I'm free after 5 p.m. on Monday, and I'm pretty flexible on Tuesday and Wednesday, but if another day works best, I can work around your schedule. Looking forward to connecting soon. So super short, something they're going to easily be able to respond to, and the key details there are just, here's when I'm available, but I remain totally flexible based on what works best for you. So with that is pretty much going to wrap up sort of our time on best practices related to cold outreach. And I do just want to sort of conclude before we move over to Q&A by just sort of reiterating the various ways in which the Career Center can be supportive and helpful to you all as alumni and as recent graduates. First and foremost, we are here to help, and you have lifetime access to our services. This fall, as many of you may know, Berklee is going to be remote. There will not be an on-campus student experience or opportunities for alumni to be on campus, but our services are all 100% remote, from programming to individual 30-minute coaching appointments to even our daily walk-ins. All of it is online and remote and can be accessed via the Career Center website, berklee.edu/career-center. I really recommend that if you are in the process of developing out your contact list or in the process of crafting messages related to outreach you want to do to new individuals, schedule, a meeting with us. I'm happy to meet with anyone and sort of review their plan and provide some edits and comments. If you feel like, I don't really need 30 minutes, I feel like I got this, but I would just like to run something by someone, then walk-in hours are a great way to pop in, meet with one of our professional staff for, a short 5 to 8 minute conversation. So I just want to remind you that those services are available to you, and this is absolutely an appropriate topic to bring to us and sort of get our guidance and professional insight around. The Career Center is a really diverse team. We have individuals from all different backgrounds, from music education to producers to artists to performers. So, certainly feel free to review our bios so that you can really ensure you get matched with somebody who can really provide you tailored expertise based on your own area of interest in the industry you align most with. So with that, we'll turn it over for Q&A. So if folks want to go ahead and use the chat box, I'm happy to take some individual questions.
Thanks, Dustin. So I actually went ahead and entered a question in the chat box to start things off. I can read it here, but what do you suggest doing on platforms like LinkedIn, or if you're going to DM somebody through like Instagram, where a subject line isn't an option, but they do get like a quick preview of what you're saying? How do you recommend kind of approaching that situation?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think where, when somebody sends a LinkedIn message, it's important to maybe use the first sentence of that message to be your subject line. So it's totally, instead of writing dear Dustin or hey Dustin, use your subject line there. That could be, going back to the examples I shared, fellow Berklee alum, seeking to connect, right? Start off with that, so that way that populates immediately in their feed, or when they're getting an email. I know when you send a message through LinkedIn or you get personally messaged, if you have your notifications turned on, it's going to go to their email. They'll see that first sentence and versus, the opening, hey, Dustin, I hope you're doing well, right? Like, you don't want to waste your time having them review that. That's something that probably isn't going to be like, super receptive or lead them to want to click on and check your message right away. So start with something that's a little bit more action oriented and specific, and then provide your follow-up. I hope that answers the question.
Hey Dustin, it's Magdalena here, jumping in also with a question. This is a question that I encounter in my own professional life, which is, do you have any advice about like the general level of formality you should use with initial emails? So I guess the difference between, for instance, writing an email that starts with, hey Magdalena, versus an email that starts with, dear Mrs. Abrego, or something like that.
Yeah, so I really recommend, we are a conversational industry, right? Like, I do not recommend writing some hoity-toity, like super formal message, but I say that by also prefacing it with, know the industry and know the person that you're reaching out to. Most of the, if you're reaching out to an A&R, for example, like most of them, I find like when I'm engaging with folks, like we're text, like we're messaging in text speak almost. So I'm not saying that that's how you should lead. I think you should always lead with whatever professional tone and voice you want to set for yourself. But if you do tend to be somebody who is an overly formalized writer, you may be overthinking it. So, keep things as a conversational tone unless there are, reasons to believe that you may need to have, a more formalized tone to your writing and to your message. But, I don't think that, that necessarily means it needs to be a longer message. But as with any outreach, I always recommend full and complete sentences. Those are simple ways, avoiding things like LOL or, what's up, or, I would never recommend that in regards to by implying like use conversational tone, but using full, complete, short, simple sentences is a great way to kind of carry a professional yet conversational tone that doesn't seem super formal. Yeah, so I see that somebody's asking about cold outreach via Twitter. The question is, any apps or platforms you suggest you don't use for cold outreach? Is it appropriate to do cold outreach via Twitter, for example? I mean, I think that's kind of like the beauty of the music and entertainment and performing arts industry, is that many of us are on social platforms, whether that's us as persons or that's us representing our artist and our brand. So I definitely think that Twitter is an appropriate space to be connecting with other artists and producers. I don't know if I'm gonna, message the chairwoman of Sony, Sylvia Rohn, via Twitter. That's probably not the right medium for engaging with somebody at that level. But depending on the individual, and again, knowing where they spend their time, if you see somebody that's super active on Twitter, then tweet at them. Like, that could be a really great way to actually get a response. And I find that people find it refreshing. It's nice when at the end of the day, I have one less email I got to click on. So being able to engage with people across different platforms based on what they really use from your observations, can definitely get you a little further and hopefully get you that response you want. Yeah, this is another great question. What are your thoughts on drawing attention to your work and accomplishments in a cold email without sounding like an egomaniac? It's completely fine I think, to be able to indicate some of your work and accomplishments. Again, it goes back to sort of like, what is the purpose and the intention of the message that you're sending? If you're thinking about sending a message because you're seeking to get on somebody's radar as a prospective client, it may be okay to actually share a little bit more about yourself. The example that I showed was more from hey, I'm looking to explore and get some general advice. You may be thinking, oh, I really want to be in touch with someone because I have an interest in going beyond just career exploration and more into, getting my work out there in case this person has an interest for and a need for, what services I provide and offer. So in those kind of messages, I feel like it is appropriate. And the best way I think to do it is, keeping things simple and concrete, and letting folks, a good example might be saying something along the lines of, given that you have given that your background is focused on this specific genre of music, I thought you might find this recent song that I written and released would be of interest. Something simple like that. You're not, if you want to include a professional website or connect them to your online portfolio, that's certainly one thing. Just think about how you best want to introduce it and why it is you would direct them to it. But indicating like small little things, accomplishments, I think, are certainly good things to know, but it may not be appropriate in that first message. So there may be a time and a place for you to indicate those things. It may not just be in that first message. The first message is all about them and what they can get from this exchange. And then once they've responded to that kind of opens the window a little bit more to be able to introduce and throw more at them, right? And you may actually find that you get a better response and more tailored advice or a better outcome by doing that. And then in a conversation saying, oh, I see that you also recently were listed in X and X publication. I actually just had my first, big streaming win, something along those lines, right? So just always think about, in that first message, what is it you really need to get across? If it makes sense and it's imperative that you highlight accomplishments in your work, then do so in the way that you feel best represents and stays true to you. But otherwise, I encourage you to really think about the follow-up communication being the best place to start to introduce some of that.
Okay. So if there are no further questions, I think we'll wrap up the event for tonight. I just want to thank Dustin again for all this super, super helpful information, and thank all of you for tuning in this evening. If anyone has any more specific questions for Dustin, his contact information is on the screen there. DG2, that's fun to say, DG2 at Berklee.edu. That entire thing rhymes. Congratulations.
Sure.
And also, I do want to remind everyone that this presentation was recorded and will be uploaded to the Berklee Alumni YouTube channel in the coming weeks. You can also head over there now and check out some other professional development webinars that we've already posted. So thank you, everyone, again, and thank you, Dustin. And I'm looking forward to doing some more collaboration with the Career Center soon.
Yes, likewise. Please don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out. I'm the perfect person to practice what we've just discussed on. So I look forward to being in touch and wish everyone a great rest of their week.